gonna make a ring today out of fine silver. So I have fine silver rectangular stock right here. It is dead soft, so it's very it's already all bent up, but it will be very easy to form into a ring. So this Contenti chart you can find online. It's free and you can download it. The first thing you need to know is how thick your material is. We already know this is 1 millimeter thick, so we're going to look on the chart and find 1 millimeter and then find the ring size we want. I wanted a 6.5, and so we're at 55.9, and here are my gauge. It's all set up. So I'm going to take the wire, and as I mentioned earlier, it's pretty bent up and wonky, but we can fix that later. So we're going to use the one end to push down and anchor the top end, which will scribe a line. So you just have to hold firmly and push. And on this one, we're going to cut using the jeweler's saw frame with the blade that's already been preloaded on it and waxed. Put it right down into the V of the bench pin. Put my fingernail right next to that mark that I scribed, and we're gonna just easy dragging the saw downward. So down, letting the frame, I'm letting the blade do the work for us and not pushing on the saw at all. Just up and down with the saw. Anytime you're pushing in forward or holding this tight, white knuckling, you break a blade. So this is just a nice, easy way to, I'm going to hold this down. Okay, so we're going to take a peek at the ends. And we know, like I said, this is dead soft, so it's really bent up. So parallel jaw pliers, straighten it out just so we could see what we have. And at the same time, as I'm straightening the piece out, it's also work hardening the piece. So it makes it a little bit easier to work with. So I'm going to file this, my elbow in line with my wrist, in line with the file. And I'm just going to place the piece right in there and brace it. And just try to get, there's a little piece of metal sticking out at the end. I'm working mostly on that. This doesn't have to be perfect at this point. What we want is just flat enough that it isn't all wonky and crooked. Okay, that looks okay for now. You could see at the top part, there's actually a piece of metal sticking out. We want that gone. We want it clean and as flat as possible to help us when we form this ring. Okay, so I'm going to take that. That looks pretty decent, even though the material itself is wavy. Take our bench pin and brace it either on your bench pin or you can brace it on your sternum. We want to put the piece of material that we have at a smaller size. We know that the size of the ring is going to be somewhere around a 6.5. So start up by 5, make it even, put it in the center with a little bit of material sticking out on either side. And we're going to push down to form the letter U. So I'm holding it tight, pushing either side. You can slide it up into like what the 5.5, almost 6 size, and flip it around and do the same thing. Okay, so from there, that looks pretty decent. And take this down. Using our parallel jaw pliers, we're going to try to form it to a letter D. So capital letter D, pull this out a bit, pull it out, pull it away from the other one, and bring those two ends to meet. Now we're going to look and see how wonky my ends really are, and they are very crooked, so we're going to have to address that. bringing it down, turning it around, bringing it down on the other side. So when you start with metal that's dead soft, it's like butter. It's so easy to work with that it's actually makes it a little more challenging. So in this point, every time I bring a side down and push in and then bring it up and push in, I'm work hardening this material, and then it's making it a little easier for it to hold its form, and it's making it way easier for me to get it into the shape I want to form it in. So I'm going to do this a couple times because it seems like it's really much easier in responding well. And now at this point, what I want to do is test it. How do I test it? How do I know I'm ready to move forward and solder this joint? And the first test is this. Close your eyes, feel the front, feel the top, feel the outside of the joint where the ring would be. It feels okay. It doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel like one side's sticking up. Feel the inside. That's your first test. Feels great. The second test, this is the most important test. You take this ring and you find a light source. You stand directly under it and hold the joint up, and you're going to look through it. Can I see light through the joint? And yes, I can. Half of it is off by, I don't know, tenths of a millimeter. So we're going to take this down. If you're home and you're working on a budget or minimal tools, you can take some sandpaper and feed it through, like you're just pulling apart with your other finger. You can feed it through and drag it one way, and then you have to put the sandpaper in the other side and drag it. And we're holding the ring together so it doesn't warp it. We're just trying to clear out whatever's in there, and now we're looking at it again. So I may have to repeat the process of the pushing together the ends and then pulling them apart and pushing, again, work hardening it. Bring it back, and then when it kind of gets springy, that's where it's actually easier to work with. Okay, so one more time we're gonna feel. How does this feel? Feels good from this side, this side. Now let's look at it from a light source, underneath the light source. A little bit more light. So this time, instead of using this, I'm going to come over here and use the soft frame with the sandpaper on it. If you don't have this at home, like I said, go back to using the sandpaper. Don't skip this step. This is one of the most important steps right here, is making sure there's no light coming through in your joint. So I just pulled it apart ever so gently. If you pull the ring apart, then you have to start all over again and apply tension, which is bringing the sides again together, bringing them over each other, pulling them back, bringing them over. So we're here now, and it shows good tension because the ring's staying on the sandpaper. I'm pushing together, and then I'm going to drag it a little ways and pushing the joint together and dragging. And I only have done this 4 times now, and I'm going to take this off, and then I'm going to push it together to get the ends to meet tight. So a little more work hardening, and then I'm going to check it underneath that light source and see. Sometimes this happens and it's just the easiest thing ever, and other times you feel that you just have to work at it. It just takes a while. Just depends on the day. Okay, so I'm getting to a place where I might be able to move forward. Again, the way I check it, you're feeling it, not looking at it, but feels good. And is there light coming through that? No, no light. We can move on. Okay, so we're going to bring it over here. So everyone's different, and there are several ways of doing things, and sometimes I put the joint facing up and sometimes I put it facing down. I think at this point I am going to do it down, so I'm going to slant my third hand just a little bit and bring it down, down. There we go. Okay, that looks semi-level. I'm going to paint some flux on, grabbing the paintbrush right on that joint on either side. I am going to use solder even though this is fine silver. I just prefer it that way. I'm cutting a piece of solder based on how wide. That's about that wide. I believe it's 3 millimeters. So I'm cutting a matching piece of solder that's just a tiny bit bigger. So the one way that you could approach this is taking the piece of solder and laying it right on the joint, which is what I'm going to do right now. But you can also put it in the joint. You could kind of slip it in the side, and then your pieces would hold it. Okay, so from here, we have to remember the solder is laying right on top of my joint. I fluxed it. When I come in with the torch like this, that solder, the flux will start to boil and heat up, and the solder will fly off and jump in here, and it'll be gone into Never Never Land forever. So, and we'll have to stop everything and cut another piece. So we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is light the torch. It definitely hasn't had time to dry, but we're going to bring this flame, the hottest part of the flame is right there, just in front of the blue tip, and we're going to come to this side and we're just heating up the metal. So it's ever so slightly that flux will dry, and when it dries, it turns white and crusty, and it actually pastes the solder right onto the ring. And you could see it's starting to dry. You could see it's kind of white and crusty. Not yet, almost. Okay, so I think it's safe now. So now the whole piece is here. We could focus on the whole piece and then the joint and then the whole piece and then just down here by the joint. We're heating up the metal and not trying to melt the solder. We're trying to bring the metal up to a temperature where the solder will melt and flow in that crack, in that joint. Just like butter. Nice. It just evenly just flowed, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to take it off with the tweezers and throw it into some water to quench it. Pull it out with your fingers. And this is the beauty of using fine silver. Hardly any oxidation. You do see that the solder and where it melted and just kind of spread. Not a lot of cleanup. So now it's time for the pickle. So here's the pickle pot. It's heated up. We're going to place it in there, and it has citric acid in it, which is not non-toxic pickle or acid that will help to clean up just this where the solder joint is. It doesn't need to clean the ring. You can see the ring is very clean because fine silver doesn't oxidize. So I'm just looking for the solder to clean up a bit. This is more of formality and steps because I really don't need to do that with it being fine silver. So we could take it out quickly. It doesn't need to be in there long. I'm going to pull it out. Always using copper tweezers with a pickle pot. The steel tweezers stay next to the soldering station. This is like a neutralizer bath. I'm just rinsing it off. And now we want to make sure that this piece is very dry before any other steps. At this point, you may not have a lot of tools, but once you start investing in tools and you have expensive mandrels and nice hammer, if you skip this step and you start forming it when it's wet, your tools will rust. Okay, so this piece is nice and dry, so we can take this and go over to grab a rawhide mallet and a mandrel and go over to the hammering station. So from this point, we can look at the joint and see if it's any good. And it looks decent to me, but you'll find out if it isn't any good and it kind of is hidden and you can't tell, you'll find out when you start to form it. So here is the mandrel, and it has a little ridge, so we're never going to hammer where that ridge is. We're going to put the joint there for right now. So the mandrel can stay on the table, or you can brace it on you however you're comfortable. Use a rawhide mallet, and what we're going to do is just start tapping those high sides. You can look down the mandrel and see. We want to tap here and any other little wonky places. And it always gets worse before it gets better. So flip it over. And flip it over the other way. You want to repeat that process of going around, stopping at the ridge of the mandrel, taking it off, pulling it around, putting it back that place where I ended hammering, back over at this beginning part of the ridge, and now giving it a little bit of steam and trying to get those bends out of the ring. And actually, yeah, that looks great. Okay, so from here I'm going to set the rawhide mallet down and look for my joint. My joint is right there. So while I'm here, I'm going to take this sandpaper and just clean up this joint. I didn't use a lot of solder. This looks like a really nice joint that doesn't require a lot of cleanup. And it's because the right amount of solder was used. It's really a great, it's great when you get to that point. It's even tough to find. So the other thing you can do, I'm seeing that the joint is almost completely faded. I'm not going to worry about getting the inside right now. But if you see like the edge has a little more solder than you'd like, you could set the ring flat and do little figure eights, like the number 8. Flip it over and do the other side. And that's just one way to take care of some sharp spots and some uneven spots. You could do the alphabet if you get bored and you have like a big bump and it takes a while. Or just go back to the 8s. Okay, so now we're going to look, and that looks good to me. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. So we're going to, from here, we know the inside joint isn't clean. Again, not going to worry about it. I'm going to put it on the mandrel. I believe we made it for a size 6.5 or somewhere in there, and it's right on the money. This is going to be much bigger because this is fine silver. This is a nice heavy hammer. I'm looking for one that has no real big dings here and will leave a nice big shiny hammer mark. So here we're going to go, and we're going to expect, this is at 6.5. we're probably going to end up with a ring that's about a size 7 1/4, but that's okay. So here we go. We're never going to hammer on that ridge right there because it'll make a big dent in the ring and then we'll have to fix it. So holding it with 2 fingers and rotating this mandrel around just slowly, so I'm getting like 1 strike in on each space, bringing it back to the center. I'm trying to do a nice even pattern all the way around the ring, so I don't want to spend too much time striking the same area. So I'm still rotating and I can feel it sliding down the mandrel and becoming a larger size. Okay, so we reached the end and we have successfully hammered nice big facets all the way around the ring. And what are we going to do now? Check to see the size. Woo, it's a little bigger than I thought. It's 7 3/4. That's okay. So it's nice. It looks good. What else can we do from here? It's going to be a little sharp on the inside and it isn't flat. It's a little wonky. So you can just flatten it out a bit. I just don't want it to go flying, so I'm just using it there. Sandpaper imprint, but that's okay. Okay, so that looks good. So just 2 last little things we can do because we don't want to spend too much time cleaning this up. This is just a fun, quick project to show you that you could do this at home or with minimal tools. So we're going to come back over here, sit down at the bench and this is a plumber's tool. And if you don't love sanding the inside of a ring, but you want to have a nice edge that's comfortable, this one is pretty sharp. Even if I slide it on and it looks nice, but probably 30 minutes later, I'm going to be uncomfortable. So you take this and you just hold it. It's almost like the similar thing is peeling an apple or a potato. We're just taking that edge right off that sharp little corner on the inside of this band, and you'll be able to see it come right off that little piece. I'm just dragging it along. You can spend as much time as you like going around the inside, but again, just so it isn't too sharp. So once you do one side, flip it over and you want to do the other side. And that's kind of a fun, quick way to do it because any way you slice it, sanding is not fun. The only other option, and there's always lots of sanding involved, or filing rather, either one, filing or sanding. The other way that most people I think is traditional is you're just going like this and you're filing and taking out that edge, which you could do that too. And that's it's effective, but I use both. I like that step with the plumber's tool, and then just going in real quick and bringing down any little sharp or rough spots. So the file only works in one direction, the forward or the push. And sometimes I only go back just to hold my place. I know that it's not filing, but I'm just holding the ring from falling on the floor or moving. So that's much better. that's your basic hammered band with fine silver. And I'm going to just show you real quick one last step. You're probably not going to have this in your home, but it'll make it look beautiful. We're going to go over there and just use a couple of the wheels that are on here, which is the um, 400 grit 3M wheel. And you should always use some eyewear, or make sure you pull your hair back. It's going to be a little loud. This is the 400 grit, the blue one. This is a higher polish. We're just going to use this real quick so you can see a before and after. So this is the inside edge that I'm working on here that I just got done filing. But this will bring it down. I don't want to use this too much on the facets because it doesn't need it. It just needs a little tiny, maybe on the outside edge. That's it. So now I'll move over to the green wheel, which the green is 1 micron, which is really fine. So this should shine it up, make it look nice and sparkly. Look at that. So you could decide from here. If you wanted to go any further, you put more wheels on, you put on a Tripoli wheel, or you put on a Rouge wheel. But if not, and that's all you have, this is a great place to stop. A lot of my students just stop at this point, and as long as there are no sharp places and you can't see the joint, you're good. It's up to you. But thanks for joining me. I had a lot of fun making rings with you today. And just remember, safety first, glasses, pulling your hair back, keeping it away, and also to just have fun doing it and know that there are hundreds of ways to achieve the same thing. I teach what works for me. Some days I do different things, and today the fine silver material was really fun to work with, and it comes out really shiny. So thanks, and have fun making.